rap lyrics about the ad tech power game. That's great. But the real expert is right here, our own Michael Rubenstein, who just gave me a mug. Michael, please.
Thank you.
Join us. Now, I'm really desperate to know one thing from you right now, which is, I can't figure this out. What does hashtag ATPG stand for?
ATPG? You know what it is. Ad tech power game.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, now, there's a long-standing history at AppNexus where you come up with incredible ideas, game changers, and then I start talking about them to the point where everyone thinks that I made them up.
Yes, yes.
But in this case, because you camouflaged it behind the hashtag, which I can't figure out, you have to explain to everyone exactly what is this ad tech power game.
It's your kryptonite, the hashtag.
I know.
So
Kills me.
ad tech power game is a periodic thing that happens, every several years in the ad tech space. John talked about what happened in 2007. John Su. Seismic shifts, tectonic plates moving in the ad tech space that fundamentally change the way the industry operates. It's characterized by the Goliaths of the industry making big strategic bets at an accelerated pace, and can sometimes take the form of consolidation and acquisitions, and we're certainly seeing a lot of that in the industry right now. It can take the form of unexpected partnerships, or it can take the form of giant tech companies trying to screw over traditional business partners. And we're certainly seeing some of that now.
Yeah, I think John did a really good job of sort of showing this cyclical nature that I think many of us have seen who've been in the space for a long time, which is it's almost inevitable that these tectonic plates will collide. And I think the AppNexus philosophy is that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in the next 12 to 18 months. Would you agree with that?
I do, and I think, in fact, we've already started to see it now. I mean, in the last 6 months or so, Facebook has gone full throttle into ad tech with the relaunch of Atlas and a number of acquisitions. I think it was on their earnings call a week or two ago that Sheryl Sandberg said that they'd be prepared to invest billions in ad tech, that they see it as completely strategic to their future, and that her biggest fear was DoubleClick. That is a change, and we've seen AOL pivot and raise hundreds of millions of dollars to effectively become known as an ad tech company. Yahoo's made acquisitions in the space. Google continues to drive toward industry and world domination. So I think we're starting to see the signs of it now. But heading into next year, I think it's going to get even more intense. And yeah.
Well, I certainly believe it. I'm curious, quick audience poll. Who here thinks that 2015 is the year of the ad tech power game? OK, some. Who here thinks we're crazy? I'm just saying who's awake. All right, so pretty much everyone's asleep. That's good. So we can talk about whatever we want. So let's do a fun exercise. Let's say, OK, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think there's a few things going on here. I'm curious what your take is, too. Number one, I think, is in this ad tech landscape, there's been a huge amount of innovation over the last several years. Social, mobile, programmatic, video, much more so than has happened inside the large companies. And so I think part of what you're seeing, to your point, is very natural. You have large companies now with huge cash flows who are looking to acquire their way in or partner their way into businesses that they need to get into. And so I would say a year ago or so, people were still not at that point of saying we need to build, buy, partner now, and do nothing was still an option. I think in 2015, I think do nothing for any of those major categories is not really an option for a major internet player.
So social, mobile, social, what was it again?
SOMO Pro.
SOMO Pro.
Social, mobile, programmatic, and video. It doesn't rhyme. I need a better.
That's not a hashtag.
We could hashtag that, but.
OK. All right, so social, mobile, programmatic, and video. Got it. What else? What else do you see as drivers for why 2015?
Well, I think the biggest class of companies today in Silicon Valley, today's Goliaths, weren't really born thinking of themselves as advertising companies. But as they've grown up and gone public and become substantial, it's sort of hard to ignore that almost 100% of their revenues come from advertising. And so they're making a big play now. I think that is where the growth is for them and their businesses. And then I think the third thing is that you've got two companies in particular, I think, with Facebook and Google, who are in a little bit of an arms race with each other, not just to build the media capabilities to capitalize on social, mobile, programmatic, et cetera, but also to define the currency and the platforms, the very platforms that we are using to determine, to buy and sell advertising, to serve advertising across the web, and to measure its effectiveness. And that arms race probably started with Google's acquisition of DoubleClick. And I think certainly what Facebook's doing now with Atlas is a reaction. And I think we're in the early stages of what's going to be a pretty intense fight.
I think that means that if Google and Facebook are trying to fight for the sort of platform of ad tech, you've got this really interesting moment where they're certainly playing to win. The question is why? And so you mentioned, obviously they're both almost 100% advertising companies, but it feels like there's almost two contrary emotions behind it. I'm not saying they're emotional. I'm just saying that at some level, part of it's they want to win because there's profit. And Google certainly saw this in search, where if you're the only player who has a chokehold on monetization, you get all the money. At the same time, I think there's fear. So there's greed and fear here of, well, what if Google controls advertising and advertising technology? Then how does a company like Facebook or the other players actually protect them? So I think that's why Sheryl says it's existential, in effect, for Facebook, is because if they lose, it will cost them their ability to grow and sustain the business. Do you agree with that?
Completely. Fear and greed, the primary motivations of all actions in business.
Well, except for one more, which is just utter confusion. So
that's true.
I think we do see a good amount of imminent confusion of just like, wow, this sounds cool. Michael just said so promo. I went on Street Easy. I couldn't find an apartment there. So let's go acquire a company.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if anyone actually does that, but I mean, it does feel like there's a certain aspect where companies don't know whether they're greedy, afraid, or how they should actually invest to play here.
Absolutely. And I think it's going to change the landscape for every company here in some fundamental way next year. I mean, on the one hand, it's going to result in a vastly increased number of options for who you can do business with. I mean, companies are, certainly if you're an agency or a publisher, major companies tripping over themselves to be able to do business with you. But on the other hand, increased competition everywhere. And in some cases also, like in the case of Google sort of declaring war on the agency model, it's going to result in tensions in the traditional media landscape that we haven't seen before. It'll be interesting to see how they're resolved.
Well, we're starting to see it. I mean, we saw Publicis make a major acquisition this week, which is certainly a response. WPP, obviously making a big move in their partnership with us.
Yep.
I think what's interesting, though, is the number of players who either aspire to be the winner of the #ATPG, or the number of folks who are afraid of losing. And so maybe we'll play a fun game, because you and I like to have fun.
The last thing before we start our fun game, and I do want to play a fun game.
We've got to play our game.
I was going to say, I think it's great news for a lot of companies here. A number of our clients this year and close partners have been acquired and have had fantastic exits, as we talked about before, because they've been sort of, they've had a true differentiator or something that has made them unique and value add, and they've been incredibly valuable to some other big player. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that this year. So in 2015, I'm sorry. All right, let's play the game.
I agree. When Michael said it was the ad tech power game, I was just like, games. I love games. And so you can tell, I just really want to play the game.
I know, me too.
And so here's the rules. I name a company, and Michael gets to be the CEO of the company for 60 seconds, and he has to do something in ad tech, or not. All right, so.
Can I ask for a lifeline?
Oh yeah, you can call a friend if they have cell phones on.
All right.
You're Dick Costello at Twitter. What do you do?
Well, I think as it relates to ad tech, obviously, Twitter has been making some moves in ad tech. They've acquired MoPub this year or last year. And they're certainly making some moves in that space. I think the problem with that is that whether it's Wall Street or everyone, I think, sort of looking at Twitter's ability to grow its audience, and that Twitter asset is an incredible asset that today seems to be sort of stuck in a slow growth niche. And so I think if that isn't solved, then nothing else really matters. And so to me, it feels like for any big company, if you're a big Silicon Valley company and you're trying to be a player in ad tech, then you don't just have to be good. You have to be better than Google or better than Facebook. And so we like to say something at AppNexus. I'm sure you know what it is. An old Irish, one of your favorite old Irish sayings.
True. Gabog.
Gabog. Gabog.
Yes.
Means go big or go home.
In Irish.
It's in Irish, that's right. Hard for me to see how someone like that goes really big in ad tech. So.
Well, I think it goes back to the fear-greed spectrum, because I think their business is so good at core that they're not afraid, because it's not like Twitter is dependent upon the broader ad tech ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I think the greed is limited by Wall Street's ability to give them the capital and the flexibility to go make a big play.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to turn the game around on you then. Okay.
Awesome. I'm ready.
So you're Marissa Mayer.
Oh, that's so not fair. Okay, that's tough. All right. Well, of course, the first thing I would do is I would call Brian O'Kelly, and I would do a deal. But in reality, actually, I think they haven't called. But I think there's a really interesting opportunity for Yahoo to actually be a world-class publisher. So Marissa's incredible at creating content. They've done a lot of really interesting deals and acquisitions around the content thesis. And I think her core belief is really not, I want to win the ad tech power game. In fact, I think it's the opposite. It's, I want to rebuild Yahoo as a portal, as a great publisher. And so I think the other alternative to calling AppNexus might be to say, look, we're going to be part of a broader ecosystem and allow the ecosystem to monetize us, and we're going to win the audience back to Yahoo. And I think actually the fact that AppNexus is able to collaborate with Yahoo, doing Yaks deals, our certified supply program, really is a different attitude coming out of Yahoo than we've seen. I think that's actually fairly smart from Marissa's perspective.
It's going to be pretty tempting for them with that massive cash stockpile from Alibaba and a number of gaps in the SOMO Pro video space. It's going to be pretty tempting for them to be a consolidator in the ad tech space in 2015.
I think we got to be careful to not confuse the ad tech space from the advertising space. So I think that if you look at them as part of an advertising ecosystem, and you look at kind of how AOL has been playing. I mean, AOL is saying they're an ad tech company, but they're an incredible advertising company. I mean, Tim has always been amazing at getting big deals with agencies and putting on events and getting up fronts. I think Yahoo needs to recapture its relationship with the big advertisers and agencies. They might do acquisitions around that, but I have a hard time imagining that they need to win the ad tech power game just to play as a major part of the advertising ecosystem. But that's just my personal opinion.
Okay, fair.
Also, they have activist shareholders and other big plans. So I think that's the same thing, is they're not afraid. If they lose the ad tech power game, it doesn't impact their strategic thesis at all. They don't have to win. My belief is if you don't have to win or believe you have to win, you're probably not going to win.
So Google and Facebook, continued sort of war of attrition as we move through 2015 in the ad tech game?
I think it's going to be so much fun for all of us because, to your point, like we've got this awesome moment when they're feeling greedy and a little bit afraid, which is perfect for all kinds of interesting activity. There's a bunch of players around the fringes. If you think about Adobe, Salesforce, Oracle, Acxiom, IBM, there's all these companies who are actually thinking not about ad tech, but about marketing technology. I don't think the MarTech power game, that's hashtag, I still can't figure it out, whatever, you can do the math. That's like a 2017 or 2018 fight for the dominance of sort of the enterprise marketing stack. And so I think they're on the fringes watching what's happening. There's all kinds of interesting stuff happening. So I think Google and Facebook are the core, where they're like both going to throw everything they have at each other. But I'm sure you all saw this. Google said something this week. They said, our biggest threat in search is Amazon.
Amazon, yeah.
Fascinating.
Who this summer announced its intention to dethrone Google as the king of online advertising.
Yeah, so this means that their core is, at least in their minds, under threat, their core search business. And that might create weakness on display. So it's going to be a fascinating year. And so the entire topic for the second half of today is really going to be, what does the ad tech power game mean for you? And what does it mean for us? And what does it mean for these big giants? But I think that one thing we've always done at the summit is try to share our internal thinking and strategic mindset for what's going to happen and help all of you prepare. Because, of course, our business is deeply dependent upon your ability to continue to grow and differentiate in a complex, overall strategic ad tech landscape.
Yeah, so I think that's exactly right. And it's what drives our strategy. As we think about this business as an media independent, open ecosystem designed to align deeply with our customers, put more money in their pockets. I mean, we see that opening right there. And I know we're going to talk more about publishers, the OAS acquisition, and other initiatives we're investing in. It's exactly what we're trying to accomplish.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Michael.
OK, thanks.
I'm sorry I couldn't take your idea for my own this time.
All right,
Great.
thanks.
Michael Rubenstein.